Well, good morning, everyone. It is so nice to be here in Hong Kong. I am based in Beijing, but I spent time earlier this year in Hong Kong, and it is really nice to see things reopening and to have face-to-face conversations as we are about to have here. We are going to tackle a very lofty question, and that is, can the Global South guide the global economy? And just for definition's sake, because I am a journalist, we like to have facts. When we're talking about the Global South, we are talking about southern states, southern nations, not only from here in Asia, but from Latin America, from Africa, as well as from the Middle East. And we have a perfect panel to address all of this. I'd like to introduce everyone very briefly, and then we will jump right into the conversation. Directly next to me is His Excellency, Minister of Investment from Saudi Arabia, Khalid Al-Falih. Good morning. Next to him is the Honorable Paul Chan, the Financial Secretary here in Hong Kong. We're also fortunate to have Ambassador Thomas Nyoki, the Head of Office for the European Union Office to Hong Kong and Macau. Hello, Ambassador. And Mr. Zhang Lei, Founder and Chairman of Hill House Investment, to give us the private equity perspective. Thank you again for all being here. Mr. Minister, I'm going to start with you. In particular, I think you're well equipped to kind of give us the global view of your position and where you are based in the world. As you know, Asia has been having a lot of success lately. GDP in Asia, in many cases, is far outpacing the rest of the world. A lot of this is based on investment, it's based on trade. But when we look at the Global South, is it equipped to continue that growth? Does it have the infrastructure for the future?
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and it's good to be here. I'd like to thank our hosts here in Hong Kong and His Excellency, the Financial Secretary, for doing all of the facilitation, and recognize the FII for the great job they do, Richard and His Excellency, the Chairman, Yasser Rumayyan. Pleased to be a partner with them and be here as part of this very important conversation about the globe working in different ways and recognizing and capitalizing on some of the global trends that are reshaping the world as we know it, including the rise and the emergence of what is called the Global South as the new engine for global growth. I would just differ a little bit with your definition on the Global South being countries in the south or south of the equator, because Global South is about developing and emerging economies and not so much about geographical position. Most of those economies are indeed in the south, but we have Australia, we have Singapore, a few other countries in the geographical south that wouldn't fit in my definition of the Global South. And of course, the Global South has been turbocharging the global economy. The most obvious reason is demographics, but also economic growth, and we're here in Hong Kong, which is of course part of the greater China, and China has been a great example of the rise of the Global South. But as China reaches and approaches its potential and its incredible growth rates moderates, which is already happening, other countries within the Global South are picking up the slack. More recently, we've seen India do that, but Latin America was just there a couple of months ago, and I think the potential for Latin America is incredible. Brazil, Argentina, I believe in Argentina, despite recent political and economic issues, but the fundamentals there. But I think a big force in the Global South is going to be the Middle East, led and driven by Saudi Arabia. And the global trends that are going to accelerate this emergence of the Global South as a driver for global growth and prosperity are, of course, energy transition. I think that will help the global south, not hurt it. The digital transition is going to be a bridge, and I think it's going to be what I call an equalizer for accessing technology and bridging some of the divides that have traditionally existed between the north and south. And of course, the demographics. Developed economies, the rich world is suffering from aging and population declines and productivity declines as a result. And last but not least, supply chain regionalization, the need for resilience in supply chain is going to drive a lot of new investments that will also leverage the other three factors I mentioned, energy transition, digital transition, and the demographic dividend that's available to countries in the global south. That will allow repositioning global supply chain. This is what I refer to as globalization 2.0, and it will be clearly driven by countries in the global south.
I've already had a conversation today about supply chain, so it is once again re-emerging as a discussion point.
Absolutely.
You brought up some very good points, and I want to turn to Mr. Chan now because you have an interesting role. You deal with policy, but you also deal with a lot of these issues, everything from housing to transportation. As kind of our local eyes on the ground, so to speak, how do you feel the Global South is progressing? Is it as strong as it needs to be to continue to be this economic force?
Well, I'm confident about the economic future of the Global South. If you look at the GDP growth, the emerging markets and developing countries from Asia, from 1995, at that time about 12% of global GDP. Now it's about 1/3. And also, this region has demographic advantages. People are young, very keen to improve their lives, and also technology and innovation are being embraced here. And this, coupled with digitalization, will expedite the growth of this area. And when you look at the foreign direct investments floating into this region, this is also very promising. So being late starter also has the advantage. Say, for example, in the area of green transition. Say, for example, in China, if you look at the wind power energy, solar energy, leading the world. So I believe going forward in terms of economic growth, green transition, technology and innovation, and the desire to continue to improve one's living will be driving the economies forward.
Well, you brought up these issues about green energy, about sustainability, which all plays into climate change. And I want to continue the conversation now with the ambassador. Obviously, we have COP28 taking place, and as someone who represents the EU, these are issues that you've dealt with for a long time. This is not a novelty anymore. This is very much a necessity. If we look at the Global South, as we've talked about, there are a lot of emerging markets, emerging economies. Is everyone equipped to achieve these high benchmarks that there is consensus is an important thing?
Thank you, Marc, and it's a pleasure to offer a European perspective on this panel. And you're very right. This is a very big challenge. And the French president said that our house is burning and we're looking the other way. But this wasn't the current French president. This was Jacques Chirac 21 years ago. So our house was burning back then, and it's still burning. And so it shows that the emergency has gotten even bigger. Now, the EU is committed to this. This is one of our two major goals at the moment. One is the digital transition, but I think above that is the climate emergency. And with COP28 at the moment, I think there's a strong European presence there. And it's very good that the Damage and Loss Fund was one of the first decisions that was taken at the COP28. That's really good. And the European Union, that is the European Union institutions, together with member states, have pledged over half of the funding for this Damage and Loss Fund, which is what will be needed by many countries, mostly in the south, to face the negative effects of climate change. So this is really important. Another big topic at COP28 is the whole issue of climate finance. And there's this goal of 100 billion per year. Now we've reached, on our side, we've reached about $30 billion. So I think we are meeting this commitment. But I think the reality is that the amounts of funding needed, and this was referred to earlier, are not in the hundreds of billions, they're actually in the trillions. And so that's really the challenge, that we step up this funding. And the EU, I believe, is doing its part. We are, I think, have a historical responsibility for climate change. But the reality is that we are only 7.5% of global emissions. So we need everyone else to come on board as well.
So we are getting different viewpoints from the public service arena, if you will, but private investment, Mr. Zhang, is also very important in all of this. And if anyone understands the realities of the world, in addition to my colleagues here, it is you, because you have individuals asking you questions about high inflation, about a lot of the global geopolitical instability we are seeing right now. Private dollars are needed. We've talked about FDI here already. What do you say to entrepreneurs, to people in management, and to individual investors about the current landscape and how it relates to the Global South?
Yes, absolutely. I think earlier everybody emphasized the importance of supply chain, the integrity of the supply chain, the technology innovation, how we should promote that actually for the global system to make it more efficient. I think right now you're seeing that potential friction of the trade and supply chain actually gonna make the inflation much longer term issue. The way to resolve that is actually we all work together to make the supply chain much more robust and less friction. And what we're seeing from a bottom up, if you look at most of what we do at a Hill House, a lot of actually very traditional businesses that leverage technology to make it more efficient. And for example, if doesn't matter you are selling shoes, you are selling in the pharmacy, you are selling even our mattress company, doing very well despite the real estate challenges, because they are able to leverage the supply chain, leverage technology, leverage digitalization with better products, better access to customers, and also with much shorter working capital cycle, so that they actually have less wastage in the system. So we are consistently seeing entrepreneurs and companies who can leverage the technology to make it more efficient, particularly useful for the traditional businesses. So in that way, I would say technology should not just be a disruptor, should be an equalizer, have the people left behind to catch up. And then my last point I want to make is really emphasizing that to all the entrepreneurs. Right now, they may have some challenges here and there. If you are a student of history, you learn about business history, the one thing I wanted to emphasize, all the best companies, the best businesses are born and nurtured in the most challenging period of time. You look at AWS, right? Right after internet bubble burst in 2002. You look at Tesla, right after 2008 global financial crisis. And they are able to really building businesses in the most difficult time. And if you do a good job, you don't have to be super smart. All you have to do is be consistent in what you do. Well, everybody else was pessimistic. You know, the pessimist in the end, you may get it right, but it's always the optimist gonna win the world.
Well, I appreciate your optimism. And we haven't even talked about AI, which I'm sure we'll be discussing throughout the conference. Mr. Minister, I want to turn back to you. We've talked about government's role, we've talked about private sector. We also have multinational organizations, such as the World Bank, which weigh in and discuss the successes or barriers that many of these economies face. Are these multinational organizations, are they well equipped to perhaps process or synthesize what you see every day?
Well, they are obviously very, very important, and they are equipped with capital. They have their own infrastructure in terms of their staffing and technical expertise. So you talk about the World Bank, IFC, MIGA for investment risk insurance, which is very important for investing and developing economies. However, one gets the impression that they're really dominated still by the old economy of the world, and the decision making is still to a large degree Western particularly, but developed economies, and they are more responsive to the viewpoints there. So climate change, which is very, very important. We're all impacted and alarmed, and I'm a believer that countries in the South are going to be more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, but they're probably also going to be able to ride it as an opportunity as they accelerate their resilience to climate crises, and at the same time build the energy systems within their economies to do the energy transition. But you find institutions, whether it's the UN, World Bank, IMF, that are still looking at climate change from the angle of the developed economy, which is probably mostly across the Atlantic in the US, Canada, and EU, and less influenced by countries in the South. I think the G20 is an interesting multilateral institution and probably has a larger role going forward. It's only less than 25 years old. It doesn't have permanent staffs and a secretariat like some of these other post-World War II institutions, but it has more balanced representation, in my view, and we've seen the deliberations within the G20 a lot more helpful to economic and developmental issues that the world economy is facing. And in Saudi Arabia, we're proud at the role we have played within the G20, dealing with issues like climate change, energy transition, and I think most importantly, the COVID-related health and economic issues. Remember that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had the presidency during 2020, perhaps the most difficult year since the G20 was created, and the organization proved to be the most relevant, the most responsive. But going back to the traditional post-World War II multilateral organizations, I think they have to be reformed, and they have to take into consideration that not only the demography, the population, is today dominated by countries in the global South, but also GDP has shifted to a large degree. And increasingly, going back to what Zhang was referring to, technology and innovation is no longer one directional, coming from the rich economies, the developed economies in the North. We're seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of technology in countries of the South. Of course, China has been very visible recently in doing this, and this is great. Saudi Arabia today has our tech sector, our innovation, our entrepreneurship is literally on fire, and it's growing year on year at a rate not seen anywhere else in the world. And our young people are generating a lot of technology of our own.
Well, let's continue with that theme about technology and young people, because when we talk about GDP, it's ultimately productivity. I'm wondering on the local level, Mr. Chan, what is being done to make sure that young people are well equipped with these skills? Are there things that are taking place here in Asia that emerging markets in developing countries really could take advantage of?
Yeah. Well, to prepare and equip our young people, of course, at the education level, in the curriculum. But on the other hand, I think it is also very important to induce their interests and let them have a better understanding of the possible career prospect if they follow this route. So what we have been doing in the Hong Kong SAR government in the past few years is that we choose two major engines for Hong Kong's future economic growth. One is financial services, which is very clear. The other is technology and innovation, which is comparatively new to us. So what we have been doing is to try to create the ecosystems, create success stories. We have been providing funding, proactively reaching out to invite startups to come, and recently also attract strategic enterprises to be settled here. Because with these strategic enterprises settled here, they will bring along not just technology, but also talent. And that would be a very positive reinforcing cycle. On the one hand, we provide facilitative government policies and funding. And on the other hand, they choose Hong Kong because, number one, this could be a very convenient platform to tap the Asia market and also proximity to the mainland. And also given the one country, two systems arrangement would be an ideal place to attract international talents. So when this ecosystem is built and being vibrant, when more quality job opportunities present themselves, then the parents and the young people will be motivated to consider technology and innovation as a career. And we are working towards that end. And even in the financial services area, we make it available in terms of private equity, venture capitals, as well as changing our listing rules to enable these companies to get listed easier. So through all these efforts, we start to see some positive results.
Well, I think we all agree education is one of the best business tools. We have just a few minutes left. I want to make sure our other panelists get to make some final words. Real briefly, Mr. Ambassador, AI. I mean, it's a mammoth topic, but based off of what you are seeing from the EU, in the briefest of terms, what is your advice to the global South?
Okay. Well, as I said, the digital transition is the second big topic that we're looking at after the climate change. And there's a lot of work being done in the European Union on AI. Only yesterday there was an important meeting where agreement was reached on the first AI Act in the world. So looking at how AI can be somehow regulated, because I think we all agree that it can have great applications, but it can also be potentially very dangerous. So this AI Act that's being adopted by the European Union is looking at, in a way, it's a kind of a pyramid structure. At the bottom, there's the vast majority of uses that are actually very positive and very good for the world. But as you go up the pyramid, this should be looked at more closely, not necessarily banned, but somehow limitations. And at the very top of the pyramid, this should actually, certain things should be banned. And here I would say typically things which can potentially harm vulnerable groups. So we're taking, I think we're on the front line in terms of regulating AI, and I think a lot of what we're looking at can be applied elsewhere in the world. For example, in terms of one of the first areas we looked at in this digital area is data protection. And in many parts around, in many other countries around the world, they use the EU as a model to look at data protection. So possibly the same thing can happen in the AI space as well.
Sure. Mr. Zhang, just 1 minute left or so. As someone who is in the private investment realm, these are great ideas, great concepts, but will the money be there?
Yeah, I wanted to quickly follow up Paul said earlier about talents ecosystem, actually. I think for us, it's really easy. What our job is very simple: follow the talents, right? Helping nurture that talent framework. I wanted to give 2 examples of one is the founder of Lala Move, and a Hong Kong-based entrepreneur, able to build a logistics-based network system. The other is actually a consumer brand. A young lady and her husband, they started a baby formula company called Little Freddy. The reason they are able to do that, because they are really building around the talent network, leverage Greater Bay Area, leverage the marketplace. I think if we do a good job as a financier, what do we do is in the end financial services, but we happen to think we are entrepreneurs who happen to be investors. So how we can leverage our financial services to be more comprehensive in addition to traditional venture capital private equity? Can we do more? Can we do private credit? Can we build a life science park? Can we do industrial park, helping build our ecosystem? That's the entrepreneurial behavior. So our advice to the financial service industry is always stay close to the talents, stay close to the real economy.
I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Yeah. I wish we had more time for more discussion. Hopefully our audience will be able to have a quick hello to many of you if time permits. But thank you. I think this was a good introduction to kind of get a look at the landscape and perhaps the blueprint forward. So we're going to make a transition now from the global south and the global economy. We're now going to take a look at mega shocks. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Cornelia Meyer, Chairwoman and CEO of NRL Corporation, and her panelists. And to these panelists, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.